Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, anyone and everyone in between, what campaign setting or type do you dislike the most? Let us know in the comments below. Twee cozy settings with nothing to say. Everybody loves selling Ghibli-inspired settings, but what I love about Miyazaki is that he's a curmudgeonly, old, stick-in-the-mud with something to say. Princess Mononoke isn't about a cozy, magical forest with cute nature spirits. It's about industrialization destroying nature and those cute nature spirits being pissed the f*** off about it. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind isn't about whimsical steampunk airships and big old bugs. It's about the looming threat of nuclear Armageddon that could blast us back to the Middle Ages if we don't get our act together and, learn to get along. Too many settings take all the cozy aspects of Ghibli, the quaint villages, the magical spirits, taking a moment to reflect on the simpler things in life. But very seldom do they make any kind of statement. Here's a weird take, but I don't know what genre this would really fall under. I would call it cosplay settings? Settings that take place in an already known universe like One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm sure there are plenty of TTRPGs for those games. You don't have to break your back bending over backwards to shoehorn that into D&D. It also doesn't help when some people take that setting and run with it and make it the most cringiest, self-indulgent, borderline needing to call the police level of fanfiction that they're forcing onto their players. Let's just say I was the victim of a Fire Emblem setting, which was never brought up in Session 0, by the way. Let's just say there was an ungodly amount of something very messed up, basically incest. The DM had their preferences fanfiction of certain well-known characters. When we got up for a break, I just left, and I never said anything to the DM. Well, the easy answer would simply be truly hopeless or tragic games. I love dark settings in games, but there's a fine line between dark and tragic. If something is only dark, it has obtainable light at the end of the tunnel that can still make the hardship right, worth it, or even have the bad undone. It might take a while to see it, of course, but it's there and waiting for you. If something is tragic, you don't reach that light, or it's never there to begin with, and the best you get is a continued surviving, misery, and maybe not making things worse for others as you fail. A more complex answer would be games and settings that don't have a proper scale and build up for power. This is very subjective to taste, mind you. If I feel too weak for too long or too strong too early, well, I have issues. If facing off against the mythical Arch-Lich that once threatened the world doesn't feel more menacing or threatening than the Bandit King we faced at level 9, despite a 9-level difference now that we're 18, something just doesn't feel right. There should be weight to our characters, yes, but also to the threats they need to stand against. In another vein, I have a minor dislike of things being overly saturated with magic, though this somewhat falls into the prior mentioned scope and scale. I've played many fine games that have a lot of magic in the day-to-day, but I don't like when the awe, surprise, and weariness of magic, as the force that makes manifest the otherwise impossible, feels like mundane technology of our world. The rare talents that wield the vast potential of magic should be accompanied by a good measure of awe, wonder, or terror, much like the magic power itself. It's off if it feels like a common technology widespread in every household. A wizard managing casual uses of it, or a rare society kingdom of mages having it, it's fine. But when every commoner from kingdom to village has magical light switches and it's viewed as little more than modern-day electricity, I get a bit of disconnect. Now here's a final nitpick. When something in a setting game feels different just for the sake of it. When the totally not elves do all the not elf things for the sake of subversion alone. If there's passion there, it can be felt more often than not. And I would much rather someone stick to what they're passionate about, or inversely explore their passions, than stick to or change something just for the sake of being diffy, samey. Homebrew settings with minimal design depth. My favorite part of character creation is reading up on the lore and culture of the region where they're from and thinking about how that interacts with my planned character concept. Honestly, I can play or DM low fantasy, high fantasy, grim dark, steampunk, etc. Now, from my experience, everything is about the right DM for the right players, and the right player for the right table. And I'm pretty vocal about it, as should everyone else be. We can love the same hobby without being good at playing it together. I don't mean it as a punishment, of course, for anyone if I don't play D&D with them. It's just the process of everyone finding their best table. For some people, it's optimizing the right builds and creating a well-oiled encounter-demolishing machine. For others, it's just kicking back and enjoying what weird bouts of RP a group of fantasy world deviants can get into. For some, the mold is Lord of the Rings. For others, it's Monty Python and the Holy Grail, or Conan, or Witcher, Lady Hawk, Princess Bride, Beastmaster, Wolfhound, etc. In my opinion, the right DM and table can make the difference in any kind of campaign setting. Similarly, you probably won't even enjoy your favorite kind of setting if it's with the wrong kind of players and DM. Settings that are just adventuring hooks. I'm looking at you, 5th edition Ravenloft. Where do people live and grow up? Where are their families out in the countryside? Where's the industry? I don't need these things fleshed out in great detail, but if the setting is literally just a city of intrigue, that's not a setting. Depending on how it is written up, it's not even a city. Don't write your setting like a zone in World of Warcraft. I know the game focuses on killing things and robbing from their corpses. Sorry, I mean adventuring. But I need a setting where regular-ass people just getting on with their lives is at least implied, if not fully fleshed out. There need to be cities, countries, continents, islands, trade, travel, and anything less than that needs to be written in a way that those aren't ruled out, even if the scope is more limited. D&D has felt incredibly small as of 5th edition, and even 4th edition. But adventure hooks are not a campaign setting. Banalification, also known as the Game of Thrones, or sword and sorcery with no sorcery. Everything besides human or human but races are banned, and even then a good portion of them are banned. A lot of DMs try to be very realistic, but are incredibly selective and pedantic about what constitutes realism. Gotta describe which direction you turn the door and how much force you put in. While I do believe the rules and settings of any TTRPG are made to be changed depending on the campaign, D&D is probably not a good system to do gritty, realistic, low-no magic campaigns. Maybe do something like the Song of Ice and Fire RPG system, or Subversion. I might have spelled that wrong, while the narrator, me, may have mispronounced it. Related, but a lot of political thrillers are generally boring in practice. What reason do I have to care about Esteros' noble houses when we aren't allowed to play as any of the Stolks or Lannisters? At most, maybe someone whose house basically is nothing but the Stolks or Lannister slaves who has no option but to obey them. Because, well, if we betray them, they take time out of their civil war killing millions to go erase us from existence as punishment. They somehow need us to support them in everything they do, yet somehow have the power to wipe us out on a whim. These arcane and complex factions would be interesting if we were able to engage with them in ways other than do grunt work for them to get people to vote your way. Maybe if we got to have a seat on the council, but oh no, I don't have enough charisma, so guess what, they don't listen. The Stokes are always kind-hearted people who sweat courage and fart perfume, whilst the Lannisters are always sleazeballs who would step over their parents' corpse to get a better spot at the dinner table. And of course, the plot is always to get Daenerys, Jon Frost, and their incest baby on the throne as the DM justifies all the shitty things they do. I'm bracing myself for the downvotes, but Ravenloft. I really want to like Curse of Strahd, but it's just so drab and depressing. I like my gothic horror more pulpy. I want the party to be racing down treacherous mountains, switchbacks, and lightning storms while chased by werewolves, rescuing pale women with improbably engineered corsets while lightning silhouettes the castle in the darkness, where a man in impeccable evening wear plays a pipe organ like he hates it. Curse of Strahd is just so muted. I know the story reasons for it, but when half the populace are mindless, soulless creatures and most of the rest are browbeaten by terror, it's not scary, it's just dull. It's not the DMs who've run it for me either. They're great. It's the setting itself. Honestly, the closest I've had to that horror feeling I've been looking for was in Out of the Abyss. It's like an eldritch Alice in Wonderland. As a Warhammer and Grimdark fan, the Chronicles of the Black Company is one of my favorite fantasy series. I totally get why it's not everyone's cup of tea. I personally enjoy the raw stories you can evoke when your character PC is the absolute ringer and you get to see their true character in the face of their flaws and situations. That being said, there's a fine line in my experience between the grimdark I love and the one setting type I truly hate. The torture porn setting. Having all of your characters wade through suffering and eat shit sandwiches can be fun if there's a payoff for character development as a result. But I've sat at a couple of tables where the primary vibe was, and I quote, "This is a barely disguised BDSM fetish scenario for the DM, and you already ate a slice of pizza, so buckle up!" I don't like big, complex cities that should have a lot going on. My current campaign is set in a popular desert oasis city that lives off the enchanted Fey forest that pours out of the magical moon-powered oasis well in the middle of a mountaintop temple. The city should be populated by the circle of druids managing the temple, pilgrims that come to visit the magical curse-breaking waters, travelers who come to see the wonders of the enchanted forest, and all the Fey creatures that fell out of the temple portal trying to get home. All of that mixes together in the city that acts as the hub the party retreats to for long rests and to buy more supplies. But I can't bring myself to put any adventures in the city. Every adventure happens outside of the walls in different places. I just can't think of any fight that could happen in town that doesn't immediately get put down by the town guards. The finale of the adventure will involve the city being attacked by a giant flying false hydra that blocks out the night sky and uses its song to turn all the inhabitants into mind-controlled husks that spawn a twisted, grinning mask as they join its hive mind and become another one of its heads. This will drive the party to fight their way to the temple and use its power to fight the hydra, but when I plan these encounters, I keep overlooking the main areas to get to different places. Probably regular D&D settings for the most part. I've gotten to a point where I want a unifying theme and tone for a setting, and what I find myself drawn to the most are aspects like magic that feel subtle and strange, fantastic elements drawn straight from folklore, versus ones that have been video gamified to be included in the game, of course, and the surreal not logic of fairy tales and stuff like that. The typical in-your-face, over-the-top, all-over-the-place kind of stuff I usually see at most tables just feels like a grab bag of fantasy tropes that the GM publishers like, without anything to make it cohesive. That's when you end up with the Mos Eisley effect, as I call it, and that is almost never my jam. Although I do have a setting inspired by Pendleton Ward, which is very much anything goes, but that's set up deliberately and becomes its own unifying element. At least I think, anyway. Generic fantasy. If I have to play another level 3 adventure where we meet at a tavern and then get told that we have to stop a couple of goblins from harassing caravans or something, I'm going to go crazy! Give me some plant-based enemies or some Kuotoa, or have us stop a group of dragonborn thieves escaping on a boat. Just something with flavor. Just spice it up a little bit. The monster manual has a lot of pages in it with a lot of creatures that I've never seen because DMs just love to run goblins and kobolds and dragons and stuff. I'm so sick of the generic fucking town where the guard captain always meets you at the gates and tells you that they'll pay you an insane amount of money to do something generic. And then you go to the one local shop and they just happen to have all the adventuring gear that you would ever need. Then you go stop the goblins and collect your payment. And then you get the zombie quest in the crypt. Ooh! And then you get the main quest where you have to travel an extremely long distance where, on the way, you meet all the usual characters you've run into in every other D&D campaign. God, just give me something interesting. Spice it up a bit. Maybe the player characters are mercenaries instead of noble adventurers. Maybe the local area is under severe political or religious oppression, and that's the unique angle. Maybe the player characters all meet in a jail cell because they were framed for a crime they didn't commit. Unless it's your first time dungeon mastering, if you're writing your own story and it starts sounding exactly like the examples given in the core rulebooks, then you might be boring the hell out of your experienced players. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know down in the comments below. What campaign setting or type do you dislike the most? And of course, if you ever want to support the channel, joining our membership program helps us keep the lights on, the videos flowing, and it gives you early access to videos. And our eternal gratitude as well. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy this year, and we will see you next time. Toodaloo for now.